Hey, Brad Squad, Yonathan Elias here with Kristy Guevara-Flanagan and Maite Zubiaurre, co-directors, writers, and producers of the award-winning short film, Aggielas. Now, Aggielas, or Eagles, is a short film about Águilas del Desierto, or the desert eagles. Once a month, this group of volunteers brave the unforgiving heat of the Arizona desert to recover migrants who have been reported missing by their loved ones. This poignant film brings a humanizing voice to the conversation about migration at our southern border and shines a light on the harrowing journey undertaken by people who are simply searching for a better life. Aggielas, which was released in 2021, has won several awards, including Best Mini Doc at the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival and the South by Southwest Documentary Short Jury Award. The film has been published online at pbs.org and on the New Yorker YouTube page. Kristy and Maite, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
First, before we get into this interview, let's take a look at the film's trailer.
Por favor, pide su ayuda para localizar al joven nicaragüense Fabricio Antonio Valle. Se perdió en el desierto de Arizona.
Águilas del Desierto. Ayúdenos a buscar a Samuel Alexander. Perdió la vida en el desierto de Guatemala. Por favor, ayúdenos a seguir adelante.
Aquí está una vértebra y un hueso.
En estas tierras tan hostiles, tan traicioneras, cada osamenta tiene una historia.
So tell me about yourselves and your roles in the movie.
Well, I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've made several films. I teach documentary at UCLA, and that's where Maite and I met.
And I'm a professor in the humanities working on migration and what we like to call forensic empathy, which is the study of the ecology of migrant care happening at the US-Mexico border, but in particular at the Arizona desert.
So what is Águilas del Desierto, which is Eagles of the Desert, correct?
If I may speak to that, because at this point I'm also volunteering with them for quite some time now. It's a search and rescue group founded by two migrants from the state of Oaxaca who had the tragedy of finding two relatives dead in the desert, Don Eli and Doña Marisela Ortiz. Don Eli found the body of his brother and his cousin in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And once this tragedy happened to them, they decided to devote their lives to help families find closure in Mexico, increasingly so in Central America and also in the United States. And since 10 years ago, they go out into the desert at least once a month for a search and rescue mission that lasts the whole weekend and look for the remains of migrants and attend to the pleas of families.
So how can families get in touch with the organization?
They have a website, aguilasdeldesierto.org. They're very active on social media. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok now, and they're very much connecting with communities through social media. And I think that's part of what has made people really find them, so that they get a lot of calls from people when they're looking for lost ones that have crossed and have disappeared.
People in Central America know them, in Mexico, all along the southern border. I just did a trip visiting shelters at the southern border of Mexico with Guatemala. And the shelters know Águilas del Desierto full well, and they actually share the information with the migrants that stay at their shelters before they continue their trip up to the north.
About how many requests do you receive a month?
It depends, but very often it's 10, 20, 30 calls per day. And some of these calls, as we said, come from Central America, from very different time zones. And Don Eli and Doña Marisela never turn off their phones. It is 3 a.m. in the morning and they're attending to calls.
Who are the people that are in this organization?
One thing that's very lovely about Águilas del Desierto is they're very welcoming of volunteers. So even people that are not officially in the organization, if you reach out, you can go on these searches with them, and they go on them every month. But they're made of mostly migrants, a lot of them coming from Southern California, also now in Arizona, and I think they have Texas chapters now. So they're growing as they reach more people and as more people want to participate.
Construction workers, domestic workers, nannies, factory workers who mostly live in the San Diego area. And though they have very busy jobs and very physically demanding jobs, they do make the effort once or even twice a month to travel Friday at night for 7 hours from San Diego to the Arizona desert and start the search at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Wow. So why do the members feel it's so important to do these missions?
They've been touched personally by migration, many of them having crossed in different ways, but likely through the desert as well. And the founders who have lost their family through migration. And just really, I think, wanting to help reunite families, give families closure for something that remains untalked about, generally unheard of in the media, not known what actually happened to people that disappeared. So they're really trying to add closure, give information, and find people.
Yeah, I mean, tragically, it appeals to everybody. There's no member of our national Latinx community that hasn't been touched by somebody who never made it, by somebody who was deported multiple times, for somebody who spent months and even years in detention centers. It's a huge issue that affects everybody.
Yeah. So what's the percentage of missing migrants that are ever found?
Since the 90s, close to 4,000 migrants have been recovered from the southern Arizona desert. Close to 2,500 have not been identified, if not more. And it is said, and our documentary mentions it, that out of each body found, there are other 5 that the desert will never give back.
Well, as your film shows, the desert is incredibly unforgiving and raw territory. And it's amazing anyone just makes it to the US border. Is anyone ever found alive? Like, what's the possibilities?
So Águilas del Desierto not only finds many remains, too many, but also saves lives, and increasingly so. So they keep a monthly record of how many people they were able to rescue. And some of them they rescue directly, in the sense that they run into them or we run into them during our search and rescue missions. But other times they communicate with consulates immediately when they get a call from somebody lost in the desert. And also they communicate with 911 and with Border Patrol. And through this concerted effort, many migrants have been saved.
Well, now, why is it important to tell this story?
Well, I think there's so many reasons, and it also depends on the audience. For a broader audience, they really are not aware of what's happening at the border. They're not aware that people are dying and how they're dying. They're not aware of the policies that have come about since the 90s that have really made this journey that much riskier and lethal, in fact. Also, people that are not familiar with the experience of crossing get a sense of what it's like. As you know, there's so much risk involved. The only reason you would cross is because your conditions are so difficult where you are, unlivable where you are, that this is an option.
So what do you hope people will take away from watching the film?
Humanizing the migrant's journey, pointing to a remarkable group of volunteers who are taking action, letting injustice stand, and to have that serve as a model for what activism can look like.
Our students learn about this, and it's a way actually to fostering participation and the plea for social justice and action. And it is also a way to have Washington pay attention to this, because it is truly a scandal and a tragedy that a voluntary group with no resources at all does this on its own when this is a responsibility that heavily lies on the shoulders of politicians. Aggielas, our documentary, is a cry for help and a cry to awake consciences.
So for both of you guys, what was the hardest part about filming Aggielas?
I've never had that kind of an experience up close to that kind of violent death, I would call it. And life-changing, and again, just made me all the more dedicated to the film and to its mission, and to really, highlight the work of Aggielas. You are looking and you want to find, but of course you don't want to find human remains, let alone children's remains. It's as a mother, it's shocking.
Yeah, it is very difficult at many levels. The physical effort is considerable. The heat, our filmographer, of course, director of photography, was carrying a heavy camera. So imagine how that was for him. But of course, nothing compared to what migrants go through.
And resources, they fund themselves. I mean, they get donations, but they are running on very limited resources, food just for themselves, where they'll stay, and they're not supported by the government, their efforts. It's all volunteer based.
So you're both professors at UCLA.
Yes.
Okay, so please tell me about the discussion guide you created for the film.
For me as an educator, it was very pleasurable to offer the background needed to really understand Aggielas, because again, it's just a piece in a big puzzle of undocumented migration into the United States. The film has also a very pedagogically suitable length, because it's 14 minutes, so you can watch it in class, and then you can, of course, work with the help of the discussion guide.
Anytime you do these kinds of discussions, you're looking for points of connection with the students. How do they connect to the material? What are their stories? Where are they coming from? Where are their ancestors coming from? What are they seeing in the media in terms of how immigration is portrayed versus their own personal experiences versus what they learned from the film, and to kind of connect the dots between those three.
Well, a big congratulations is in order for both of you. I know how hard it is to not only make a film, but get funding and get, the crew out there. That's a big congratulations to you two. What does this reception mean to you?
It's been incredible that people really responded. It's so wonderful that the film has gotten out there to so many different communities. And then, of course, the exposure of being on PBS, reaching entirely different audiences nationally, and the New Yorker as well. All of those have just been exactly what we hoped for in terms of reaching audiences. And so the awards are just, that's just icing.
There's a slightly less positive side to it, because the audience often reacts with, I didn't know anything about this. This is new to me. And that's the depressing side, right? Mm-hmm. How so many people have no clue what is going on. It's truly alarming that so many eyes have never been made aware of this, have never seen this, don't know about it.
Now, I want to know, what films or filmmakers inspire you?
A documentary filmmaker that I've always admired and been inspired by is a Mexican-American filmmaker, Lourdes Portillo. She does a lot of great work on the border. She's done work, also personal work about her family in Mexico and her life here. And she just has a great humor as well to it all. So I've truly admired her. She's one of the reasons I came to filmmaking.
Yeah, I don't know. In my case, I always refer to Italian neorealism, because I do really admire the stark tone of films that go back to that trend, and how they are not afraid of directly portraying social injustice and social inequality.
Nice. Oh, tell me, what are your immigration stories?
So I grew up in Los Angeles, from a long line of Los Angelinos, and that often say the border crossed us. My grandfather did come from Guadalajara, and he walked over in the 40s, I believe. He was a traveling musician.
Yeah, so my story is Basically, my mother migrated from Germany into Spain and then to Colombia. And I myself was born in Colombia and then migrated on a ship to Europe. And then 35 years ago, I migrated to the United States. This said, my migration is a migration of privilege, not to be compared.
Well, how can people find out more about your work?
Well, we have a website, aggielasdocumentary.com, and you can find the link to the full film there. You can see where it's screening, and you can connect to Águilas del Desierto as well.
What's next for you both?
Well, I'm wrapping up a feature that I was working on before this that is very different. It's more about representation in Hollywood and how it affects our culture. So it has some overlaps, but feels very different.
Yeah, and I'm actually presently co-producing and co-writing a feature documentary on a different side or story of migration, which is the impact migrant death causes in families back in rural Mexico.
Well, both of you guys, I would love to know, what are your American dreams?
I have hope for my students and my own daughter, that the world is just changing so dramatically. I worry so much about the conditions under which they live and under which they're growing up. So, my hope is that our peers can make some changes for them, so that they can have better futures.
My dream is that the big monsters that are still alive and well in this country, which is racism, sexism, also, class difference, social inequality, you name it, become, first of all, openly visible, that we keep speaking about it, and that it changes radically.
Well, I thank you guys so much for joining us today. I would love for everybody that's watching to please go and watch Aggielas. Kristy and Maite, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.